Hi, everyone. It's Leslie with the Small Business Development Center. I want to welcome everyone to Cybersecurity, our SBDC training series. We're on the second part of human factors of cybersecurity. This class is going to be backup strategies. I called Chad a cybersecurity guru last time, and he kind of laughed at
Yes.
me. But I am not taking my words back because he has so much information on cybersecurity. He is an expert in the field, and I'm looking forward to today's webinar. So if you have any questions, please type it into the Q&A, and we'll sit back and listen to Chad present cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. And I will just roll with it. I will just roll with Guru. That works. Welcome, everybody. Like Leslie mentioned, we are in the second class of course 2, covering human factors of cybersecurity. Today, we'll be focusing on backup strategies. What are the things that you should be doing to make sure that if anything happens to your data, that you can quickly access your backed up information, whether it's from a cyber attack or whether it's from an environmental event like a fire or a flood or et cetera, that you're able to easily recover your data as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and jump in. This is one of our quicker classes, focusing on the 3 main types of backup strategies. So today we'll do a quick overview and recap our last session on user behavior, which flows nicely into this section. And then we'll look at the 3 different types of backups: internal, external, and cloud. And then we'll finish up today with a brief overview on incident response, which really flows into the concepts of backing up and you know what we do in addition to backing up our data to get our organizations back up and running. And incident response flows nicely into the last part of our training next week. So let's do a quick overview and see where we are in the series. Last week, we covered the foundational concepts. This week, we are covering the human factors. And today we are on backup strategies. Next week, we will wrap the series covering cybersecurity and organizational management, looking at controls and protections, and really looking at the technical aspects that we of protecting our networks, protecting our devices, the types of software that we should be looking at, and then we'll wrap up with documentation development. All of those organizational things that we should be doing in order to have processes and procedures in place to not only protect ourselves on the front end, but have a strategy to recover on the back end. So brief overview on training. You know, why are we here? You know, we're here to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity, and really today to get more detail on the hardware, software tools that we should have in place to protect and back up our data. And again, while we won't necessarily always have 100% success, these steps that we take today specifically will help us better recover and better protect our data and better protect our organization and its operations to get back up and running. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look back at our user behavior segment from Tuesday. And the main concepts that we cover when we talk about user behavior is social engineering. And recall that in a social engineering attack, a bad actor uses human interaction or social skills to obtain or compromise information about an organization or its computer systems through manipulation and reliance on our willingness to trust. And keep in mind as well that social engineering accounts for 90% of cyber attacks. And the primary form of social engineering are the phishing attacks using email or malicious websites to solicit personal information by posing as a trustworthy or organization. In addition to phishing, we discussed those variants of phishing, vishing and smishing, but in all cases, an attacker can send a communication either by email or by voice or by text, seemingly from a reputable source requesting some type of critical personal or business information, often suggesting that there is some sort of problem to get you triggered to take action. So with that, let's do a quick recap of our last session. The first recap question: the type of social engineering that relies on interactions with potential victims through software to attempt to install malware. Is that phishing, computer-based, or human-based? And if you recall, whenever we try to make these attempts through software, that is computer-based social engineering. The next question, a common indicator of a phishing attempt is what? And this is going back to that sample email that we covered last time. Either a suspicious sender's address, a generic greeting or signature, suspicious attachments or hyperlinks, or all of the above. And in this case, common indicators would be all of these: the suspicious address, the signature, the suspicious attachments or hyperlinks. And in all cases, make sure to have your antenna raised and be aware of those suspicious attempts. Next question, this email is an example of what type of social engineering. And keep in mind that when it comes directly from an email, it's considered phishing. Smishing would be the same type of social engineering attempt coming through a text. And vishing is a type of social engineering attempt coming through voice or over the phone. Going back to the COVID statistics, from January of 2020 to March 31st of 2021, the US economy has lost how much due to COVID-19 related fraud cases? And so far, year to date, or really as of March 31st, the economy's lost over $388 million. And that number is steadily increasing. And our last initial question for today from last session, this is a form of phishing where fraudsters tailor attacks to a specific group of victims using personal details. And that is going to be our spear phishing attempt, which is targeting, again, specific people inside of a group, as opposed to mass phishing, where you're just throwing out a large net and hoping that someone bites. So as we wrap up our user behavior, again, be wary of unsolicited attachments, even from people that you know. Just because an email message looks like it came from someone who that you know doesn't necessarily mean that it came from that person. A lot of viruses can spoof return addresses, making it look like the message came from someone that you may know. But if you can, in all cases, or in cases at least when it seems suspicious to you, make sure that the person that sent the message is legitimate before opening attachments. Trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, there's a good chance that it may not be right. And At worst, you would have delayed slightly opening something that could have potentially destroyed your machine or destroyed your organization's network. So, as always, trust your instincts there. And then finally, create, like we mentioned last time, create separate accounts on your computers. That allows you, or allows your computer to not automatically download software from sites that you visit. The computer will assume that you are not the primary authorized person on the machine, and will automatically ask for authorization before downloading anything. It's just another added layer of protection to make sure that you're not downloading any information that could end up being malicious to your device. Make sure that you keep your software up to date, and try to use different passwords for different accounts. And I know a lot of us have multiple passwords. Multiple sites that we use for work. Probably multiple sites that we use for our personal use, our Netflix accounts, all of our other accounts that we access. And when possible, try to differentiate those passwords as much as possible. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the different backup strategies that we're going to cover in today's session. And for each of the backup type, what we'll be covering is, we'll be covering four things. What is the type of backup? What are the pros of it? What are its cons? And what are its security concerns? And we'll cover that for each of the three sessions, or each of the three types. But before we get into the first type, internal hard drives, just a quick overview on data backup. And generally, we want to follow the 3-2-1 rule. All computer users, whether you're a home user or you're a professional user, should back up your critical data that you have on your machine to help protect it from loss or corruption. Saving just one backup file may not be enough to protect your info. So to increase your chances of recovering lost or corrupted data, we recommend this 3-2-1 rule. And the 3 means that we keep 3 copies of any important file. So that's 1 primary copy and then 2 backups. The 2, we want to keep files on 2 different media types to protect against different types of hazards. And we'll cover what all those different types of hazards could be. And then finally, we want to keep at least 1 copy offsite. And that means outside of your home or your business facility. So again, for each of these types of backups, we're going to cover the pros and cons and the security considerations for each of these backups. So let's start with the first option, which is the primary option, which is your internal hard drive. And that's just the hard drive that's on your machine. Nearly every desktop and laptop uses their internal hard drive to store most of the information they need in order to run, as well as your primary working files. Because your hard drive is rewritable, you can use them to perform rolling backups, where you automatically and periodically update files and most recent versions of your primary files right on the internal drive on your machine. This isn't necessarily a backup per se, but it is a storage type, right? So this is your primary storage right on your machine. The pros of your internal hard drive is that it allows you to quickly update and back up files. It's right there on your machine. It also, you can maintain a simple file structure, and it saves costs, right? It's built into your machine, so it's built right in there, and there's no additional money and no additional purchases that you need to do. But what are the downsides of it? You know, because you're able to perform rolling backups, those can very quietly propagate any corrupt files, any malware that are already in your primary files. Those can propagate to your backup files. Worse, if your internal hard drive is damaged, stolen, or corrupted, you could lose both your primary and your backup files. And then additionally, your computer constantly uses the internal hard drive. So the more backup files you store there, the less space your computer has to operate. And then finally, the working lifespan of the hard drive varies. So installing new internal hard drives, you would need a little extra technical expertise to install a new internal hard drive, which typically most people don't do, right? I mean, if once we start getting to the end of the lifespan on our computers, on our laptops, et cetera, we will typically just go out and get a new machine. But let's take a look at what those security concerns are. And the security concerns in a lot of ways will fall right in line with the cons of the internal hard drive, the internal backup. The backup files that are stored on the internal hard drive are just as vulnerable to damage and corruption as the primary files. I mean, they're all right there together, right? Additionally, your internal hard drives are only as physically secure as the computer that houses them, right? So, I mean, because again, we talked about physical security in our second session. If you get up and leave your laptop on your desk, and you get up and leave and go to lunch, and someone decides to steal your laptop, as an example, your primary files as well as your internal backup files are now all gone, right? So they're just as physically secure as the computer that houses them. You can encrypt hard drives to prevent unauthorized access to stored data, but that data could be erased and the hard drive could be rendered unusable, whether it's through magnetic degaussing without necessarily accessing the hard drive electronically. So to increase the security of your internal hard drive, you want to encrypt the drive's contents, physically secure your computer, and follow any network security recommended practices, like using firewalls and antivirus software and those kinds of things. So that's the primary way, but not necessarily the best way if we're really truly trying to back up our data. But that is the one of the three backup options that we have. So let's go ahead and take a look at option 2, which is probably the option that most of us are using, which is our removable storage media. And your removable storage media is going to be the media that you connect to and you disconnect from your computer. It can be a more versatile backup option than your computer's internal hard drive. It allows you to physically separate your backups from your computer, and it can help you keep your data safer from both online attackers as well as power surges. And again, that goes back to those environmental concerns that we talked about, especially if you are not only keeping your backup device, whether it's a removable hard drive or a flash drive, not only if you're keeping it disconnected from the computer, but also if you actually take it with you from your office in the event that your building catches on fire. As an extreme example, your data is physically with you, and therefore a little bit safer. It's kind of like, you know, the president and the vice president not flying on Air Force One at the same time. If you're able to keep your data in separate places and safe, then you have a better shot of recovering it. So let's look at some of the different types of removable removable storage media. Let's start with the external hard drives, and those are the same as the internal hard drives, but they're portable and they're easier to install. They are still prone to physical damage. They're still prone to potential magnetic degaussing. They can be potentially bulkier in some cases. I can tell you that I'm pulling out my personal backup hard drive, which is the Samsung T5, the portable SSD. It's not much bigger than a credit card, so and it holds a terabyte of data. So it's a pretty useful, secure external hard drive, and they've become less bulky over the years. The solid state storage, that is really just a fancy way for saying that's your internal or your flash drive. That's your USB flash drive, your thumb drive, memory sticks, you know, different terms that we use to more or less describe the same thing. That is what most people use as their portable storage media, right? That's what we use to, you know, transfer files in some cases, you know, moving them from one machine to the other. We could be using it for our digital music and et cetera. Our optical storage would be our CDs, our DVDs, our Blu-ray discs, et cetera. And then finally, magnetic tape, which is a digital tape system that can comprise a tape deck, individual tapes, or a tape autoloader. The individual digital tapes can provide capacities more than a terabyte, kind of like my external hard drive. And once installed, the tape systems require little user interaction and can access data very quickly. So those are different options for your removable storage. So what are the oh, I'm sorry, we have more pros, so that's great. The pros are they're flexible. It's a flexible data storage alternative because they're portable and they can work on most computers. They're also available in a wide variety of storage capacities and prices. So you can find the device that fits your needs as well as your budget. And most are removable, and I'm sorry, most removable media are also reusable. You can delete files, add files, etc. So what are the downsides or the cons of the removable storage? One is the portability makes removable storage devices convenient, but it also makes them prone to loss or theft, right? And you know, going back to the example I was saying of, you know, keeping the device with you, it certainly can help protect you in the event that something happens to your primary computer at the office, but it does open up the opportunities for loss or theft or you know, something happening. So we just have to be careful and make sure that we're storing it or keeping it in a place that we know is safe. But also, if you're doing rolling backups, they could still spread corruption and malware from the primary files on your computer to the backups. So it doesn't necessarily protect the external storage device if your primary files are already corrupted. You're just moving corrupt files from one place to the other. So So again, it's important to always double check your primary files to make sure that you don't have corruption there. And then what are the security questions relating to the removable storage media? Um, uh, you can have direct control over your data, right? So that is a positive. However, that means that you're responsible for protecting that data, even when you're traveling with it, for example. So to increase the security of your overall removable media devices, some things that you can do is password protect them, encrypt the data whenever possible, connect them only to systems that follow network security recommended practices like using firewalls, antivirus, removing them from the computer. You want to remove them from the computer when you're done completing your backup and securing them physically. So if you're at a hotel and you're traveling for work, you've got all of your data on your external hard drive. It might not hurt to ask the staff at the hotel, hey, do you do you have a firewall? Do you have antivirus software in your computer? Are your computer safe? I mean, generally they will be, but it does not hurt to ask and make sure that the machines that you're putting your external drives into are safe. Excuse me. And then finally, our third option in our 3-2-1 process covers cloud storage. And cloud storage, cloud customers rely on broadband, internet broadband to access a shared pool of computers resources, right? Cloud service customers are able to access data directly from the cloud. It allows you to have access to your data without needing your external drive. You can, at that same hotel, assuming that your network is safe and your computer is safe, you can log into your cloud service provider and pull down or access your data straight from the cloud without having to physically carry it with you. And that's that third option of making sure in the 3-2-1 that your data is guaranteed to be kept off-site, right? Because it's in the cloud. So what are the pros of the cloud storage? For one, remote backup services can help protect your data against some of the worst case scenarios like natural disasters or critical failures of your local devices due to malware. Additionally, the cloud services give you anytime access to your data and your applications anywhere you are, like I mentioned, as long as you have an internet connection, with no need for you to invest in any additional networks or servers or any additional hardware. And it can be cost effective. You can purchase more or less of the cloud service as you need. And the cloud service provider will transparently manage your resource usage as it grows or shrinks. And then some providers can also ensure regulatory compliance in the handling of your sensitive data, which can benefit a lot of small businesses. And I'll give you an example. I came out of the financial services industry, and there's a lot of regulatory concern there about managing individuals, their personally identifiable information, their financial data, et cetera. So when it comes to selecting a cloud service backup provider, there were a limited number of companies that were recommended that actually provide top levels of security. And so I had to go out and do some additional research to make sure that when I backed up my data to the cloud, that I was using a service that not only ensured the safety of my client's information, but also protected me from any potential lawsuits or liability for using a substandard backup that could potentially put my client's information at risk. Moving on to some of the downsides of cloud storage. And for one, the cloud's dependence on internet could delay communications between you and the cloud. So you may have some delayed communications depending on the internet speed that you're working with at whatever location that you're at. Additionally, there's no universal standard or platform or language for cloud computing. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying, because there is no universal standard. You do have to do some research, some due diligence to make sure that the service that you're choosing is meeting all of the standards for the information that you're processing, as well as the standards for your industry. The physical distribution of the cloud data over many different geographically dispersed servers could potentially cause some organizations, especially ones handling sensitive data, problems with jurisdiction and fair information practices. So again, going back to the doing the research on the provider that meets your needs. The other thing to be aware of is that cloud customers really have little or no knowledge of their service providers' overall infrastructure or its reliability. And so you do surrender a lot of control over to the cloud provider. So again, that goes back to reading reviews and doing research and looking up the viability and the safety of the different cloud providers to make sure that once your data does go up to the cloud, that it is safe. It's interesting. We typically give these presentations around lunchtime, and my automatic cloud backup usually happens around noon. So usually when I'm giving this part of the presentation is right around the time that my cloud backup is actually executing. So I don't have that very timely download like I do in normal classes. So some of the security pieces to cover as they relate to cloud storage. The cloud service providers will often encrypt user data, making it harder for attackers to access your critical information. So that's a positive. However, the cloud users have little or no direct control over how their data or knowledge of their cloud service provider security practices. So, shared clouds will store your data along with many other users' data in the same cloud infrastructure. So that could be a potential security risk. So one of the things that you would definitely want to do before you entrust your critical data to a cloud service provider is to check with the provider, carefully check the service agreement, and look and see what that provider's security practices are. And to increase your to increase the security of your data in the cloud, look for a provider or cloud service provider that will encrypt your data with the established encryption algorithms like AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, or Blowfish. Transfer your data via an SSL, a secure socket layer connection. Follow the established network security recommended practices. Make sure you're using firewalls. Make sure they're using firewalls, which as a cloud provider, they likely are, but it never hurts to check. And again, physically protect the hardware that stores and processes and transmits your data. And make sure that you prevent your data from leaking other customers on the cloud? So these are all questions and conversations that you may want to have with the cloud provider before sending your data up to the provider. Again, just to make sure that that information is protected. And then another question to ask is, if you ever do stop using that provider, find out what happens to your data once your agreement or your use of their service ends. How do they destroy your data? How do they erase your data? Is it truly erased? Do they keep it around? Those are good questions to make sure that you have answered. So what you don't want is your data just sort of lingering around after you've stopped using a service provider. So different things to consider before deciding your best backup options. Before you choose which options you're going to go with, assess the advantages and the risks of each type of media. Look at your own financial resources, your needs, like the amount of data that you need to back up, the protection for sensitive data, whether that's customer data, personally identifiable information, personal health information, whether or not it's your info, your employees' info, your customers' info, and the accessibility of that data. How quickly would you be able to get to it if you need to get at it right away? For home users, you may be storing a relatively small amount of personal data. You may want to consider keeping primary files on your hard drive, and at least, again, the 2 backup copies, maybe on a flash drive or a backup hard drive. People, individuals, small businesses who want to store large amounts of data may want to consider, again, obviously your hard drive and your server, but at least, again, 2 backup copies on separate servers, maybe using high capacity optical media and high capacity solid state storage, right? And then possibly digital tape systems or cloud storage. So there are a lot of considerations for the type of data that you're backing up. If it's a lot of data, that's a lot of sensitive info, you may want to go one route. If you don't really have a whole ton of data, there are a lot of options in between. So it really just depends on all of those different factors, as well as costs. So we'll go ahead and wrap up today's session by covering incident response, and we'll cover this in a little bit more. But you may have heard the term incident response. All that is the organization's systematic approach to prepare for, detect, contain, and recover from a suspected cybersecurity breach or attack. And again, we say cybersecurity because that's what we're talking about, but in reality, it's really being able to prepare for, detect, contain, and recover from any type of potential data loss or risk of data loss, whether that's, again, environmental, power surges, all of those different things that could potentially impact your data. We want to be able to recover and get our information back as quickly as possible. And that's where all of those different backup strategies come into play. Having that plan in place does help ensure an orderly, effective response to incidents, which in turn can help protect your data, help your reputation, protect your revenue. How the organization responds to the incident can have a tremendous impact on the ultimate impact of the event. Becoming a victim of a cyber attack is bad enough, right? And we've seen the statistics on what could potentially happen, but organizations that fail to take the appropriate steps on the front end can find themselves even more vulnerable, not only to losing their data, but also more vulnerable to potentially to employee or customer or shareholder lawsuits and penalties potentially from regulators. They may also find that their insurance company will not accept their claim if they didn't take the predetermined steps. So, you want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And again, we will cover the different types of plans that we'll want to have in place in our last session when we look at documentation development. But this is sort of the first little taste of one of the plans that we'll cover. But important to note, the incident response doesn't end when the incident is over. It continues to provide support for, again, successful litigation, documentation to show auditors, historical knowledge to feed into the risk assessment process, and then improve the process over time, right? So like we mentioned before, as it relates to cybersecurity, bad actors are constantly trying to find new ways to access your data, trying to find new ways to infiltrate your organization. And as a result, our response planning, our protections, the software that we use, all of those tools that we use to protect ourselves also have to constantly be improving. And that also includes our training and our awareness and all of those pieces as well. As our organizations grow and as these risks evolve, we also have to be in a constant state of improvement. So with that, just to summarize what we covered today, again, find the right backup strategy, that fits your needs, right? You may not be processing a whole ton of info, so there may not necessarily be a need for a significant financial investment into a top cloud storage provider. But again, going back to that 3-2-1, you want to have multiple backups, at least one of them offsite, and you want to regularly test those backups. It would be conceivable to have, a backup, if you're not processing a whole ton of information, maybe you're using, 2 backup hard drives and one you keep at the office and one you keep in your briefcase that you take with you when you leave the office. There are different types of ways to make sure that you're protecting yourself. Again, you want to regularly test the backup strategy, and testing will be a key factor when we talk about documentation development, because not just the backup strategy, but testing your incident response plan, testing that the people who you entrust to get your organization back up and running, that everyone's been tested and everybody knows what the processes are, and so that you can quickly get back up and running as soon as you can. And you want to, like I said a few minutes ago, you have to be in a constant state of improvement and document. Now, in past sessions, this class used to be the one right in front of documentation development, so it was always a nice little segue into the last class. But again, document everything that you do, and we'll cover that in a lot more detail in our last session in a week. So with that, let's go ahead and launch our last quiz of the day. And let me go and jump to that. So this first question is asking, which of these is an example of solid state storage? Is it our CD, our flash drive, zip drive, or magnetic tape? And that answer is going to be our, it's actually going to be our flash drive. We've got the answer there for magnetic tape. It is actually the flash drive. So our next question. The more backup files are stored, the less space is available on the computer to operate. This is the downside of which type of backup? Internal hard drive, cloud storage, removable media, or a media stick, memory stick. Okay. And that is correct. So it's the internal hard drive. That's sort of our first line of defense. That's the backup that's built into the hard drive on our machine. It's a great first start, but it's vulnerable to all the risks that your computer is vulnerable to. Oops. Let's get back here. So our next question. Additionally, this type of backup provides anytime access to data and applications anywhere there's an internet connection with no need for you to invest in network servers and other hardware. So our internal, our cloud, our removable, our memory stick. So this one is the cloud. So, with the cloud backup, you can show up at a hotel as long as you know your cloud service provider, your username and password to access your account. You should be able to access the files that you have uploaded to that server without having to carry any additional, your laptop, your computer, your backup hard drive, etc. And our next question here, I realized that text turned blue on me. This type of storage media connects to and disconnects from the computer and helps keep data safe from both online attackers and power surges. Is that our flash drive, cloud, internal, or RAM? And that is going to be our flash drive. So remember, the line here where it says help keep data safe from both online attackers and power surges, that is assuming that your external hard drive or your flash drive or whatever you're using, that is assuming that it is disconnected from your computer. If you keep it connected to the machine, then it can potentially be just as vulnerable as anything else that's already on your machine. And our last question for today, let me go ahead and pull that one up. This is the organization's systematic approach to prepare for, detect, contain, and recover from a suspected cybersecurity breach or attack. Is that a disaster recovery, organizational security, process improvement, incident response? And we've got the answer in there, and that is our incident response. So, and we'll cover this in a lot more detail actually in our last session. The difference between the incident response and the disaster recovery. Your disaster recovery process is really everything that you're doing to make sure that you can recover and get your organization back up and running. And your incident response really becomes a part of that whole disaster recovery process. So with that, I'm just going to check and see if we have any questions in the Q&A, and we don't. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Make sure you think before you click, and also remember, as we talk through a lot of these issues, that your cybersecurity incidents are not just technical; they're business problems, they're human problems. The human component of this is absolutely critical, not just for you personally, but also for the business, and also for your employees and your customers, and the people that you partner with, your business partners. We all have to do our part to make sure that we're protecting everyone's data. And so with that, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you on Tuesday when we cover controls and protections, and we start to get into cybersecurity and the organizational management pieces, and we'll wrap up the series next week. So again, thanks everybody for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and we will see you Tuesday.
Thank you, Chad. I will see you Tuesday for organizational management controls and protections at 1:30. So you guys have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.